Okay. Hello, guys. Let's start off today's session. Our mental health determines how we think, feel, and act. Good mental health is when you feel positively about yourself and cope with everyday pressures. If you have experience issues, with dealing with everyday problems, it could be a sign of a mental health issue and you should address it as fast as possible. With that, let's go into today's event Break the Silence on World Mental Health Day. This event is brought to you by Professional Helps. And on their behalf, I would like to thank Meenakshi Medical College and Research Institute and also express my immense gratitude towards Sun Pharma, the South Indian Medical Students Association, Clinicase Essence, and the New World Protocol for standing by us. Today's session is a panel discussion, and the panelists are Dr. Ardhanari, Associate Professor of the Department of Psychiatry, Meenakshi Medical College Hospital and Research Institute, Dr. Sumitra, who's a consultant psychiatrist, Dr. Pavitra, who's also a consultant psychiatrist at the Schizophrenia Research Foundation, and we have with us Dr. Mohammed Saifuddin and Dr. Perugu Jyotir Vishnu Bharadwaja. Okay, with that, I'm handing over the reins to Dr. Ardhanari. So please take over.
Very good evening to one and all present here. My name is Dr. Ardhanari Manikvasagam, as Bhagat has told. So let us directly go into the session. So history of mankind has always been controversial about equality and inequality, but the core nature of humanity always rise above all controversies to fight for its right and what is right as a cause. So today we gather around in this wonderful evening to discuss a few hard-hitting mental health issues you. I hope this discussion over few people who are actually in need of help when it comes to mental health issues, but is not knowing how to approach or get help from. So today's October 10th, 2020 to 2021, it is celebrated as World Mental Health Day. On this occasion, World Mental Health has given a theme for 2000 to 2021. Mental illness in an unequal world is the theme that we are going to discuss today. It is extremely important that we arrange for an available, accessible, and affordable mental health care for all, which is a dream. Let's talk and let's take the very first step in making that a reality. So, to go into the topic, let us start analyzing the mental health theme of today. Everything has got a lot of inequality. So, I would like to know when it comes to mental health, there is already a lot of difficulties. It is for the past 50 years that mental health has been accepted in the medical fraternity as something which is real and which is something treatable. So, what is your take on this year's mental health theme? I would like to start upon with Dr. Sumitra.
Well, for this, actually, for the year 2021, WHO has themed it as mental health care for all. Let's make it reality. But, whereas this year's theme, which has been set by World Federation of Mental Health, is mental health in an unequal world. But basically, the overall objective of the World Mental Health Day is to raise awareness of the mental health issues around the world and to mobilize the efforts in support of the mental health. As this theme is because the world is it's increasingly polarized with the wealthier becoming wealthier and the number of people living in poverty is still far too high. So this theme in 2021, which highlights that the access to the mental health services remains unequal, where between 75 to 95% of the people with mental disorders and low and middle socioeconomic status are still unable to access this mental health services. Even in higher income countries, there is not of much better health services. So due to this lack of investment in all the mental health, you mean the mental health gap that is disproportionate. So after this COVID pandemic, it has created a global crisis, be it in terms of economic or educational or health or a social crisis. Overall, it's been a global crisis which has created a negative impact and negatively it has affected many people's mental health and it has also created barriers for people who've already been suffering from this mental healthness and also this addiction, be it any kind of substance use disorders. So earlier in 2019, it was only 1 in 10 adults who have been reported of any anxiety or depressive symptoms. And during this pandemic, they've been reported of around 4 in 10 individuals have been reported of psychiatric illness. So apart from this, even the frontline workers like health workers, people who have been living alone, all these have been like they become more prone for this mental health issues. Basically, they were facing with difficulty in sleeping issues, any eating issues, and increase in alcohol consumption. But even during the lockdown time, they've just opened only the bars and the consumption of alcohol, and these increase in quantity and consumption of alcohol has also been increased. So this United Nations campaign, where throughout this entire month, they've just planned and they've been explored to identify on 4 major topics. That is the supporting the good mental health and supporting the persons with LGBT and addressing the racism and promoting their dignity for all in the United Nations. So I would like to end this with saying that let this mental health campaign enable us to take actions to reduce the inequalities and encourage the practitioners to share like what they know about the mental health inequality and also encourage others to open up and talk about the mental health issues.
Thank you so much, Sumitra. Of course, I agree with whatever you have told because the pandemic definitely has caused a lot of bad effects, but I would like to see that in a different way. Pandemic has actually gotten a lot of awareness among people to take care of their mental health because, and it also taught them how to, survive among this crisis situation. Though they had to go
Yeah.
through a lot of mental pressure, at least they were bringing that, to their focus and they were trying to do something about it, which they had neglected for a lot of time before that. Yes, thank you
It's
so much.
true.
So I would like to invite Dr. Pavitra to share her views. Welcome, Pavitra.
Hello, thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me over. So I really go with Dr. Sumitra in what she was talking about, mental health in an unequal world. My views on this pertaining to why would they have chosen this theme for a global agenda is probably that they are not just looking at a particular country, but they're trying to overall bridge the extreme difference that is there between developed countries, developing countries, and even within the developing countries, there is so much of difference in socioeconomic class, literacy lines. So we all belong to a diverse background, and this diversity is not just a social diversity. I mean, it is on all fronts at an individual level, at an interpersonal level, organizational, national, policy making. I think the diversity is endless. Like she mentioned about the race, I mean, this also brings in a lot of color and flavor to what I feel that WHO is looking at this time. In terms of how do we patch this gap or how do we bridge this gap, I always feel that looking at, instead of looking at it as a complete overview, getting into the intricacies and understanding what is preventing people from approaching or what is stopping them from getting the access. So when we look at it from an individual level, so there is either a barrier to take the care that is available, or there is a deficit in amount of care that we are able to provide as well. So I think to bridge this gap and make mental health available for everyone, I think the strategies should be looked at globally, but then acted very locally, understanding the difference and the diversity. We can't make the diversity go away, I feel. Rather, we should be able to incorporate the diversity in our action plan. And I think that could be a great area where we look at in first understanding what are our difficulties in reaching out. And I think this is a great platform to do that.
Thank you so much, both of you. So, unlike the usual webinar, we wanted this to be something that involves a lot of youth. And instead of just psychiatrists talking about the problems that they have perceived or they can solve, we thought of involving some youngsters who are actually facing a lot of problems when it comes to mental health issues. So I'd like to invite Mr. Vishnu, Dr. Vishnu.
Hello, sir. Actually, Vishnu's brother has some emergency, some family issue, so he's not currently joining with us. So
Okay.
instead of the aim, I'm just taking his place now. Sir,
Yes,
as you
welcome,
mentioned,
Pawan.
yeah, we actually
Nice.
felt
Thank
it's
you.
most of the time it's one-way discussion rather between taking our opinion in front and then discussing with them. I feel it's much better. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes, Pawan, you can ask in.
Yes, sir. Ma'am, good evening, ma'am, and good evening to one of present here. I actually felt like depression always, people say like it's present with low moods and suicide. And then, many of the times my friends tell like, bro, I'm very depressed, macha, I get depressed and then stressed. And then they say like, I'm very irritable, annoyed, as a, like, they use a lot of fancy stuff. So what's your opinion on this? I would like to.
Before we get on to that question as such, Pawan, I think I'm very grateful for Professional Helps to actually be taking this attempt to include the students, because today's youngsters are tomorrow's citizens, and they're going to decide how it looks, and they're actually the people who are going to bridge this gap. So having you to ask us questions is definitely a very interesting and a different approach. So I'm really grateful for Professional Helps for taking this attempt.
Thank you so much.
Pardon me. Actually, when we had a small brainstorming session, we thought we can finish the session with one session. But after we actually did a brainstorming session, it was so nice that we wanted to make this particular session as two.
Wonderful,
Because
wonderful.
we had so
That's
many
great.
we had so many questions that a lot of youngsters kept on asking. So we could, because of the time constraints, we wanted to keep it as two. Thank you
Right.
so much. Yeah.
Right. Like this question that Pawan raised is wonderful in terms of, we always think, when we look at mental health wellness, we're looking at extremes, I feel. We're either looking at extremes of disorders, be it psychotic, people who talk to themselves. What we really feel is mental health illness is one spectrum. Then the other spectrum also, when we're looking at depression, we're looking at a really one end of depression where there is suicidality, extreme low mood, um, loss of interest. Definitely the prevalence, like Dr. Sumitra said, is going up when we're looking at severe mental illnesses as well. But on the other hand, like you mentioned, Pavan, there are instances where a lot of physical symptoms start presenting when there are stress. I would just want to call it, like, say, mind body interaction that is there. We face it in our day-to-day life. I am tensed about something, I have a headache. I'm scared about something, then I end up having, my heart starts beating fast and I'm really sweating. All those physical symptoms tend to come because there is a stressor. Our mind is worried about something. So with on those basis, similarly, there are a lot of ways that stress or mental, your affected mental wellness can present. It could be irritability, headaches, it could be even more physical symptoms. So when your physical symptoms are not explained by any medical physical causes, then we definitely should look at an underlying mental health condition in it. Does that answer your question, Pavan?
Okay, ma'am. Okay. That's great.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pavitra. So nowadays, for the past 2-3 years, I have been seeing that a lot of youngsters come and then self-diagnose themselves, saying that they have depression. There is a lot of misconception about depression per se among youngsters.
Right.
As in, say, for example, a small issue is there. There is a small breach in their relationship, or they fight with their friend, or some faculty scolds. They immediately think that they are depressed. They're just reacting to that situation, but they perceive that it is depression. So immediately they go and then try to, portray that they're suffering from a huge depressive state or depressive episode. And I see of late, for the past 4-5 years, there is a lot of young people who present with a lot of self-injurious behavior, a lot of substance abuse, feeling of emptiness, and sudden change of mood. As in, they start loving somebody, and then when there is a small situation that happens, which might be very trivial, but from love they go all the way to the hatred, as in they behave in a very extreme way. So, what exactly is your take on this, Dr. Sumitra? Because there is a lot of you know uh, change in their behavior and mood.
Yeah.
Could you please enlighten your views?
Yes, yes. That is like, yeah, as you said, like many youngsters, it could be any kind of a personality problem. Where most likely when you have this chronic feeling of emptiness, frequent suicidal threats or attempts or sitting their hands, these are most likely features of cluster B personality that beat any kind of borderline personality disorder. So many people with borderline personality, they experience problems with depression. So, in fact, it's very common that
I
borderline
think
personality
Pavan, you have to
disorder,
mute. I think Pavan, thank you.
borderline personality, and depression they co-occur. But you can say that with a lifetime prevalence of major depression during the course of borderline personality, it was around like 80 to 85%. So, the symptoms of borderline personality and this depression they overlap significantly, and so these depressive symptoms are like it's usually very transient, and it is related to any kind of interpersonal issues, maybe following any kind of a traumatic event, or it could be any kind of relationship use of following a breakup, or any kind of traumatic event. So what happens is such depression usually lifts dramatically when the relationship is restored. So in general, the depressive symptoms are the same as be it any kind of severity of depression, but when it comes to borderline personality, the quality of the depression in borderline personality is different. So it is usually associated with feelings of anger or feelings of deep shame. So if you have a borderline personality disorder, you probably feel like you're on like a roller coaster. So it is not just it's because of your unstable emotions or relationships, also your wavering sense of who you are, and you'll be very unclear and will be extremely sensitive. Even small things which can trigger, and you'll end up with intense reactions. So once you've turned upset, you'll have trouble calming down. So recognizing these borderline personality symptoms would be like you have other features like chronic feeling of emptiness, emotions shifting quickly, and often experience like extreme sadness, guilt, anger, and constantly afraid that people who they care about will abandon them. And they would describe most of their romantic relationship as intense and unstable. And they feel about people in life can dramatically change from one moment to the other. They don't always understand. So they also end up in having some dangerous behaviors like driving recklessly or having any kind of unsafe sex or self-injurious behaviors, like as I mentioned earlier. So these are the struggles where they have with borderline personality disorder, which frequently overlaps with depression.
Thank you so much, Pavitra. Because whatever,
Mitra.
most of the times, any sad mood need not be depression per se.
Yeah.
Majority of the times, it might just be an acute stress reaction or just a reaction to whatever situation has happened. But many people perceive it in a wrong way. That is the problem. There is one group of people who glorify their symptoms, saying that even when they have a small issue, they try to glorify it and they try to make it so big when there is actually no issue. But there is another group of population who are actually suffering from a lot of depression, a lot of mental health issues, but they are not able to come out and reach. So that would be the next question that I would like to ask Dr. Pavitra. What do you think are the barriers of youngsters in reaching out for mental health professional help?
Honestly, that's a question we should ask the youngsters because even we want to know and we want to correct ourselves and make ourselves available to them. But
Yeah, I think
from what, sorry?
at the end of your thing or in between, maybe Pawan or Mohammed can tell their views also on this question.
Yeah, definitely. I mean that's something that we are looking forward to add on to our understanding so that we can change that better. But from what I've seen so far, I basically work with the youth mental health team. So what I've noticed so far is that one, they have this feeling a lot of times that I am fine, I can manage it. So we tend to push it till the brim of our possible threshold and only then reach out for help, because we don't know, sometimes there is a deficit in what all kind of help can I actually reach out for. Idikellama, should I go to a mental health professional? Is should I, be reaching out to them even for all these problems, are a question that lingers around in a lot of people, I feel. And then they have this stigma over what will my friends think, what will the others think, or who should I approach, is one whole big question I think they have. How do I approach them, how do I find them? And then it comes to the problem of letting your parents know, the parents being supportive, parents also understanding the need for this also, I feel, is a problem in a lot of cases. Sometimes the parents want to bring the children and the children don't want to come, while sometimes the children itself want to come a lot. I think that's a turnover now where children have more awareness and they want to come, but are not able to bring their parents along. And the difficulty about them reaching alone is one, the age, and second is also about the financial stability that the children have, and how are they able to manage the finances. I think all these put together are different areas where I have come across in youngsters having a problem. I mean, I'll be really interested to know more from the youngsters in the team here.
Say, for example, Pawan, take it, or let me start with Mohammed. So, in case if you have some kind of a mental issue, let's take it an imaginative way. In case if you have some issue, what will be the preventing cause for you to approach mental health?
So the number one reason why I feel people don't approach as frequently is we've got this misinformation through media. Once I'm diagnosed with a mental health disorder, that tag is remaining throughout my life. Number one, if I get diagnosed today, I'll remain with that for the rest of my life. So let me try to be strong so that I can beat it out on my own. No need to see a therapist. Number two is the many people, especially boys in all sorts of colleges across India, we have substance use disorders. I mean, they use all sorts of substances, and they are scared if my psychiatrist asks about such history. What do I do? I may have to reveal my bad history. This is another issue. Lastly is the confidentiality. If my friends come to know, if my peers come to know, ghar pe pata chal gaya. I mean, not just psychiatry. Sometimes people even don't go to an orthopedician. Okay, what if people come to know at home? They might start asking me what I've been doing in college. What led me to come to this point? So these I think these three things are the major reasons why some youngsters don't consult a psychiatrist.
Because thank you so much, Mohammed. Actually, chronicity is a misconception. Not every disease in psychiatry will have a chronic course, or the duration won't be that much. And there are treatment protocols different for each disease. It is not necessary that every psychiatric illness requires lifelong or long-term treatment at all. So it all depends on the severity. It all depends on that person's susceptibility to develop this kind of an illness and how he responds to treatment and medication. What is the genetic loading? All these things are the ones which determines the patient's response. And most important thing is compliance and understanding, insight over the illness. So these are the things which are associated with it. So Pawan, do you have anything to add?
I think almost what my brother said, but I feel like people usually even resist to go to the doctors, not only to the psychiatrist. Even they won't prefer to meet some doctors, like some professional healthcare professionals. They think they could self-treat it or whatever it may be. They think they will self-treat it. Maybe it may be due to this financial issues also. So we can't fully blame them also. It may be due to the financial stuff, but still, yeah, we need to make more awareness and make the persons to come and approach the health professionals in order to get in good, efficient treatment. That's what. Yeah.
Of late, I'm also coming across a lot of people who report of a lot of cyberbullying because of their mental health condition. Say, in case if I say they're depressed, then somebody bullies me, they're afraid that somebody might bully me. What we need to understand is bullying is something wrong. You trying to reach out for help is not wrong. That is the right thing. The one who bullies you is somebody who is to be punished. So the whole concept itself has changed. We are all so afraid to go and get help. Even genuine things, they are a lot of youngsters are afraid. And another thing about revealing about our problems to our parents is also something which is so huge among youngsters. They can actually tell to your parents. Actually, currently, parents are actually understanding much better. They're more approachable. Not everybody, of course, I understand. But it is always better to inform your parents whatever that you're going through, because they might be the last people to be worried about you or to be protective about you, rather than going and trying to get help from a total stranger. A lot of people go and then try to discuss about their personal problems, thinking that they are ventilating to somebody else in online. In this lockdown, there has been a lot of forgery that is happening because of this reason. Somebody is vulnerable, is being targeted, and they get into the wrong routes. So, yeah, that is my point, Pavitra.
Right, right. I think what Mohammed said and what Pavan said are absolutely right. In terms of a lot of people have this worry about what will happen to my confidentiality. And like Dr. Artanari said, there has been a lot of cyberbullying for celebrities itself. So we stand no chance in that. When celebrities come up and say that I have had a mental health problem in the past, there have been a lot of Twitter posts that say that it is a way of increasing their fame. It is a way of just seeking attention. So I think that itself is a big worry when it comes to youngsters. But we can definitely talk about the confidentiality issue that you raised. If that concerns you a lot, I think that is something that we definitely have to talk about if time permits down the line.
Yes. Over to Pavan.
Sir, actually, I had a small question for Dr. Sumitra, sir.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I've noticed even amongst my juniors in med school and myself, there's a lot of misconception about the treatment of depression and personality disorders. Could you please explain it to us, ma'am?
Okay. In general, like, what are the misconceptions or the myths that you have commonly heard
Or the treatment, ma'am?
about the
Most-
mental illness? In
Yeah,
general, about the
pharmacology.
mental illness. No. I'm asking you, like, in general, what are the conception or the myths that you have generally about the mental illness, like, that you've heard of?
Misconceptions about depression? ma'am?
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Depression ke बारे में, the most common misconception I've heard about depression is that if a person is acting normal, if he's doing well in class, if he's doing well in sports, he cannot be depressed. If he's functioning well in life, this person cannot be depressed. Number one.
Yes.
Number two,
Yeah.
if this person is interacting well socially, he's very outgoing in parties. I mean, he still has a group of friends who take care of him. Then he cannot have a mental disorder. He's paranoid. These are the misconceptions I've commonly come across.
Okay, fine. Yeah, true. But some of the other misconceptions, myths that surrounding depression, like they say that medications are always the best way to treat depression, like which is not true. In case always it depends on the severity of the illness. They also end up saying that depression is always triggered by any kind of a traumatic event, and going through depression is normal part of growing. And once you try to keep yourself busy, it is going to cure your depression. And they also say that men do not develop depression. And taking antidepressants is a lifetime commitment. So it's true that, yeah, some people with depression will take antidepressants for many years, like in order to manage their symptoms based on very rarely, that is to prescribe antidepressants for lifetime depending on their severity. Basically, it takes around like once we start them of any kind of an antidepressant, it's going to take them for 2 to 4 weeks for it to begin to work. And it is also important to point out it's not safe for people to stop taking antidepressants all of a sudden because of the risk of all those withdrawal symptoms associated with certain kind of medication. So once the symptoms has been resolved, like after taking for around 6 to 12 months, we generally plan to taper off the medicine. Uh, if it is like mild or moderate, we usually prefer with any kind of psychotherapy or a cognitive behavior therapy, which will respond like along with pharmacotherapy is usually suggested. Be it with personality disorders, like there is no as such, no specific like FDA approved treatment for any kind of personality disorders. However, based on the various other symptoms or various kind of illness associated with the personality disorders, maybe with antidepressant, which will help them with your mood, anger, impulsivity, and this mood stabilizer, which is going to even out their mood swings, aggression. Along with that, we give them other psychotherapies. So these are the most common myths like that we have heard of frequently.
I think I'd like to add upon a few points. So when it comes to depression, a major depressive episode usually will require a treatment for about 1.5 years to 2 years for complete resolution of symptoms. Right.
Yes, sir.
This first 2 years, with proper compliance, usually the patient's chances of getting the illness again is very, very, very less. Provided the patient is responded well, provided the patient is being compliant. But for a patient who is having an acute stress reaction or acute stress disorder, usually a treatment regimen that we follow is for about 6 months. Usually it will resolve on its own. And we don't directly start the patient on drugs as soon as the patient walks into our OPD. If and only if there is a need of this patient medication, only then we will be starting the medication. And not every medication is going to give you side effects. That is one major thing that is a huge conflict when a patient is wanting treatment or not. And another thing is like one more point is there. Duration of untreated illness. If it is more, it is likely that your response also might take longer. Right. So these are all the certain things that I would like to stress upon from our side.
And
Earlier you go and earlier we start the treatment, earlier the response might be expected. Yeah, Pavitra.
sorry, if I can just add on to clarify, I thought not only medications are the only option, like they mentioned, there are a lot of therapies that are given. And you also mentioned about the difference when it comes to personality disorders and depression. Personality disorders, like Dr. Sumitra said, does not have pharmacological tablets you don't give for personality disorders, but there are a lot of therapies, talking therapies, or psychotherapies that we talk about for personality disorders and for depression, which can be considered for mild and moderate depression. And these are areas where you need more clarity. Your doctor or your therapist will inform you about this, and they will take a very detailed history, like Dr. Adnari said, and only then get into what kind of treatment plan they have for you. So I think it is worth going and checking with them first, having them and having an open discussion with them before, taking up a call on what you want to do. After all, you have the choice to take a decision.
Yes. So next question from the student side.
Sir, may I add upon to the previous question? So, sir, there are multiple situations where many of my peers walked into at multiple colleges, not just mine. There was a common issue where they informed about depression to their respective faculty other than psychiatrists, and it was not welcomed well in classes. So one thing, there was a breach in confidentiality. Next day, professor points out in class, says that, is this what being depressed means? Or let us say if someone has a physical injury, they get certain relaxation in college so they can cope with their health. That kind of look towards depression has not been created, at least in the instances where I was aware about. So is there any better approach that students can take to cope with their mental health?
Yes, the question is directed to Dr. Pavitra or Sumitra?
Pavitra ma'am.
I mean, that's a wonderful question, Bharadwaj. I mean, that is very, very important. Like you say, there is so much of understanding for physical illness, and why is it not there for a mental illness? I understand, and I'm really sorry for your friends who have to go through that discrimination. And I think that's the whole point for this talk at all, and for the whole team. I mean, our aim is to increase the awareness, not just for youngsters, for faculties, and there are a lot of efforts that are being taken by a lot of organizations to help the caregivers and the faculties to understand the nature of a mental illness and also be supportive in that process. I think we will eventually get there. The very fact that you raised this question is an awareness, I'm saying. So, I mean, we will eventually get there to a place where we understand that mental illness is no less than or even more important and leads to a lot of physical illnesses. And at that point, I think we will get that awareness.
I'd like to add upon, actually, every college or every educational institute per se actually has to have a specific person appointed to be called a student counselor,
Yes.
where the information of the student will be kept confidential. And that particular student counselor should be a qualified person, either a psychologist who is qualified to handle these kind of patients, or a psychiatrist who is qualified to do that. Either of them can be there. And that particular person should be approachable, and he should be confident enough to handle patients or students who are coming up with issues. So, and there is another one system also which is being followed in medical schools called as foster parenting. So the entire faculty who are residents of that particular place or college or hospital will be assigned with one set of students, and these set of students can go and approach that particular faculty who is a foster parent whenever they are having any kind of issues. It's not only mental health issues, any kind of issues. I think that the more we spread awareness about mental health issues, the more they will try to understand, rather than just to go and try to act when there is an emergency situation like suicidality.
And the other area where SCARF is working on is basically building a peer support volunteer team, which is trained in mental health within colleges. And we are actively doing that in a few colleges, where group of interested students will actually be trained to be peer support volunteers with coordinators who will subsequently be more mentored and organized by experts from our team. And that way, the talks that you say about we don't know who to reach immediately and how to approach them and how to get from there will is expected to be resolved. We're all in that working process, and this peer support volunteer concept is there a lot abroad. So it's just a matter of time while we're incorporating it here, is what I feel.
And to what Pergu has told, if something like this something like that has happened, like a faculty coming and then saying that is this what depression, the next day that they approach, that is something that I strictly stand against.
Yes.
That is not something that should have happened to that student.
Exactly.
It breaches confidentiality, when moreover it hurts that person more. That doesn't prove that you belong to that faculty state. You don't understand. A good faculty is somebody who understands the patient, the student's mentality, and try to improvise his method of teaching. That is what I always think about myself. When somebody is not able to understand something, there might be something fault with me. Maybe I can try some other way. But of course, when you do it in a large scale, it might not be. It might be difficult. But at the end of the day, pointing out a student and then embarrassing them is something barbaric, which I don't stand for, which should be, spoken against of. Thank you so much, Vergu, for bringing up such a wonderful
1 minute.
question.
I just wanted to mention one incident which had actually happened in our college in the past. They actually tend to beat any college or the professors. Like, they tend to react only after an incident that happened to one of the students, the youngster who actually attempted suicide. Not attempted,
Yes.
he actually committed suicide. So only then, we from the Department of Psychiatry, where we started screening the entire UG students, starting from first year to final year. Every week we started screening, even the management who agreed, and they helped us, and we started screening each and every student. So only when such reactions or something happens only they tend to react and they come up with something to do about screening with the youngsters with mental illness.
So it should be focused as more of an understanding rather than just a reaction to something negative. That kind of a mentality, I think it is slowly building up. People are definitely giving a lot of importance nowadays to mental health issues also. Because
Definitely.
it takes
After
time
this
to heal.
pandemic, yeah, sorry.
After this pandemic, yeah.
Yeah,
After this pandemic, entire world has started talking about mental illness and how we need a lot of.
And this teleconsultation is actually helping out where even one individual, even without knowing, without the knowledge of the family members, they come for teleconsultation, which is actually that kind of thing is actually helping them. So this one pandemic thing, that's one good thing that has happened.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the next question will be asked by students.
Yes, sir. I had a question for Dr. Pavitra, sir.
Yes.
So a lot of juniors generally ask this. What is the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist? And how does a person choose the right therapist for their condition, ma'am?
So, I mean, that's a wonderful question and needs to be definitely addressed. So, both a psychiatrist and a psychologist are mental health care experts. The difference is that the psychiatrist has an MBBS degree. He is a doctor by basis and then subsequently does a master's in psychiatry. And it is a medical area. That is how the psychiatrist is. They can prescribe medications as well. When it comes to psychologists, they come from they do this a process of BSc, MSc, MPhil, PhD. So that is the process that they go through, and they can be clinical psychologists if they have done masters in clinical psychology, because not just doing psychology warrants them to actually take up patients and start treating patients, because clinical psychology also requires registration. And only after they are a registered clinical psychologist can they be undertaking therapies. That is a kind of psychologist that you essentially that you essentially need to look for if you are looking at going for therapies with them. So the psychologist cannot prescribe medications because they don't have the basis of a medical degree. They will be able to treat you with therapies, counselings. These are the areas that the psychologist can look at. Psychiatrists can also, on interest, be trained in separate psychological therapies. So if the psychiatrists are also trained, they generally receive a training in general psychology and general therapies. But if they have an interest, they can get over and enhance themselves in particular types of therapies. And subsequently, they also practice both therapy and medication. Does that make it clear?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think Telugu has a question about
yes,
Sumitra. Yeah.
Yes. So, ma'am, in continuation towards the confidentiality of information with psychiatrists. So, especially before 18 years, that will be first year of college. Technically, we are minors, and all the information needs to be shared to our patients, our parents. So, how much can we rely on psychiatrists to not share information, at least if asked by us? So, there are multiple situations where families are not very welcoming of certain things students do in colleges. Like there are many families where I know where students are into alcohol and social alcoholism, and their parents are cool with it. But in some families, that might be a very, very huge issue. But so one common stigma, they do not go to a psychiatrist, is that the parents might come to know about this. Or in situations of homosexuality, they recently figure out about such a thing, and they don't want that to go out to their parents. So how can we can we trust upon the confidentiality with a psychiatrist? Secondly, in case of minor, how would that be processed?
Yes.
That's
I think both of you can answer. I think Sumitra
Go
can
ahead,
start answering
Sumitra.
for
Go
you.
ahead.
Go on, go on.
Go ahead.
No, go on, go on.
No, it's for both of you. Both of you. The question is for both of you. It's a panel discussion.
Exactly.
So we can start with Sumitra. So what are your views on?
Okay. Okay, definitely confidentiality is the one way psychiatrists we maintain. But one thing what we don't is like anything that is being harmful to self or harmful to their surrounding, people around them. So if such harmful things are being considered, like be it any kind of suicidal attempts or threats or death wishes or any kind of self-injurious behavior, all these kind of issues where the confidential won't be maintained. We will have to, and we have to like reveal to their family members. So that is the one major thing, most likely the thing that will be maintained as a confidential thing in the psychiatry. And apart from that, when you spoke about this LGBT, that basically that depends on kind of society they stay in and the kind of education about the society thing about the LGBT. Only as now this LGBT has been like people have started opening up and talking about it, and people are recognizing. And it depends on this, as you said, like depends on the family members and other things who are willing to take up that social drinking. Actually, even that. Some, as you said, like social drinking, it is like some families are agreeing to it. So even a small, according to us, like the even small quantity of alcohol, it is actually harmful. Even that is not considered as, can't be considered as a social thing.
So, Pavitra?
I think Sumitra covered about harm to self and harm to others is a non-confidentiality clause. We will disclose that, and it will be informed to you that we will disclose. So that is one thing. And talking about homosexuality and LGBTQ, I think that is not an essentiality to disclose to your parents without your consent, irrespective of the age. But overall, minors is a gray area because there needs to be some guardian who we are looking at when we are considering for any form of treatment. How did the minor approach us? Is the guardianship going to the schools or is the guardianship going to the parents? It is a gray area. We do need some amount of understanding as to who we approach next when it comes to minors. So if you're looking at college students, apart from the first year of college, after that, subsequently, apart from harm to self or others, we will be able to maintain confidentiality. And even for younger children, if they are brought in by parents and then they have particular feelings that I don't want to share this to my parents as of now, there are a lot of instances that happen that way, that we do respect the confidentiality and we can stay away from it unless it is of any harm to them. But ultimately, when it comes to minors, there is a need for some amount of guardian that we're looking at for any form of going, especially when it comes to pharmacological management. We definitely need everything. Can't be just taken at the whim of the child. We still need a guardian. That's my view on this.
See, when it comes to confidentiality, like to give a small example. Say a couple comes to you for therapy, right? Say for example, the husband is having an extramarital affair. He doesn't want the wife to know. He wants that information to be kept confidential. You have to keep it confidential. If that husband is HIV positive, he wants to keep it away from the wife, which you cannot do.
Right.
If they are physically active. So he might harm the other person also, and he might harm himself also. So as a therapist, as a psychiatrist, you have certain boundaries. When it comes to substance use, when the substance is illegal, that automatically gets you into incrimination. Consumption of alcohol, nobody is going to go and then reveal. But consumption of alcohol and driving under intoxication, that has got legal implications. that is where you cross the boundary, right? When there is a risk-taking behavior associated with the drug-taking behavior, that is when the confidentiality can go. When there is a risk for that particular person, then the confidentiality can be broken. Right. So that is how I'd like to explain this. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
next question for Dr. Sumitra, I would like to ask. Uh, so the most common problem that today's youth are facing is online gaming and online, betting kind of games. With money they play. So could you please enlighten us on prevention and treatment of the same, Pavitra? Sorry, Sumitra. I'm sorry,
It's okay.
slip of the
It's
tongue.
like not everyone who plays online games or be it any kind of gambling, not everyone who plays who are addicted. So
I think.
first, let me start.
Sorry for the interruption. Sorry for the interruption, Sumitra. There is a small delay in your. I think there is a small connection error. Maybe what you can do is you can probably switch off the
Yes,
video and then talk. It might be clear. I think there is a small connectivity issue. Can you talk now?
Yeah.
Fine. Loud and clear. Go ahead.
It's not, as I mentioned earlier, it's like let me start off with symptoms because not everyone who plays games are addicted. So it should be like, evident for at least for 1 year. All these symptoms which I'm going to list out, it should be evident for at least for 1 year, like thinking about the game a lot, needing more time to play, and feels good when you spend more time on playing. And you are unable to play or quit, not wanting to do any other things that you used to like earlier. And you have, due to this playing, where you have problems with your academic, where you drop in your academic, problem with your work, your college, your at home. And due to this, you also start lying to people to whom you are close about the amount of time you spend playing. And finally, also you end up using gaming to ease your mood and your feelings. So, like, it's also more common in boys and men more than in girls and women. So, playing for around like 5 hours per day is going to result in more than 5 hours per day is going to result in any kind of poor mental health condition. So, when you come to a psychiatrist, like, we give you some basic strategies. So, people might end up thinking that these basic strategies and why do you have to come up to a psychiatrist. But at this point of time, like we don't follow these kind of simple strategies. Like one thing that you have to do is when keep the amount of time spent on gaming under control. Like set a time limit for playing, and you definitely have to try sticking to them, which should be done by parents first of all, and keep phones and gadgets out of your bedroom so you don't play at night. So most likely we end up playing mostly in the night time, and parents should consider should provide their children with other kind of alternatives. Like you should communicate with your friends or other alternative entertainment behavior that you used to like them earlier. And you should always take urge to relax your eyes after like every 20 minutes of computer usage, and also take a short break for 30 minutes of internet usage. Is a simple and substantial way to fight against this addiction. These are the kind of simple strategies where you can follow when you are like addicted to any kind of online games or gambling. And because these gamings, they are highly addictive because of the fusion between this reality and the real and the virtual, because like any kind of PUBG or Free Fire or whatever game. So discouraging these children from such games can, from the initial stages itself, it can prevent them from future addiction. So apart from this, the management is initially with the psychotherapies, what we do with cognitive behavior therapy, where we help the person to modify their thoughts with, the healthier pattern of thinking, and we motivate them to take some responsibility for themselves. Another kind of, now recently, particularly after this pandemic, they have actually opened rehab centers in Kerala and also somewhere in Tamil Nadu, particularly for these children who have been addicted just for this gadgets and other gaming and gambling, whatever may be the kind of addiction. They have opened a rehab center. And
Digital
the other one,
detox centers, right?
Oh,
They're called
yeah.
as digital detox centers.
Rehab centers.
Yeah.
It's called.
Detox. Yeah.
And apart from this, even the psychotherapy is not helping. We put you the only the medication so far, like few studies which show like very small studies, like showing with 6 weeks of studies where escitalopram and bupropion have appeared to reduce the time spent in online and also the the kind of craving to use that have significantly come down with these medications.
Thank you so much. So the next question will be to Dr. Pavitra. So one of the most common problem that happens between a doctor-patient relationship is the patient Googling or researching about their disease and then coming and then bombarding the doctor with questions. So most of the time we find that the patient is being grossly misled by the information that they get from the internet. So I would like to, I don't want to have an argument whether it is correct or not. It is right of every person to go and then find out what is wrong with them. So I don't want to argue on that point, but I would like to ask you a question. Are there any platforms where patients can genuinely go and then find information about their mental health?
Right. So like just for the previous question, Dr. Sumitra had spoken about that there are 2 studies that have this amount of evidence for a particular drug, and it is still under process. So when we're talking about evidence for evidence-based practices, there are a lot of things that we need to look at. So doctors also refer the internet to get information, but where do we get this information? Is we get it from studies, research articles, research blogs, and then there are so many sites. Even when you're looking at research articles, we have to look at whether they are index journals, where these are getting published, how new are they, are there systematic reviews about this, are there meta-analysis? I mean, these words I feel is too much for a common man to just take. And even for doctors, I think we are looking at a lot of understanding, and that's why they say that the medical profession is always a continuous reading and you have to keep updating yourself. But for common man, there are websites, but I wouldn't be clearly able to say how genuine each particular website is. Rather, I would say that you trust your doctors, you get the information that you have from the Google or whatever, and then please do clarify it. Don't take that don't take that for real. It's not just Google, YouTube's, Instagrams. I mean, the places where they seek information is innumerous. So after you get the information, I think if you're going to go by and follow a particular instruction, I think it's very important that you get an expert opinion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pavitra. And I think we are nearing the end of our session. I would like to call Mohammed for his last question.
Yes, sir. I have a question for Dr. Sumitra, sir. Ma'am, could you please guide us youngsters about stress handling or coping up skills? Because during periods of extreme stress, like for example, exams or some people have breakups, now that post-pandemic colleges are reopening, we have exams in very short intervals. So it's become the stress is multiplied several times. So could you please teach us some strategies, ma'am?
Yeah, that's true that all of us will have. The stress is always, you feel stress is good or bad?
Some stress is good, ma'am, because then we don't procrastinate.
That's true. Stresses are good and bad. Only the good stresses, only then it will make you,
One extempo thought, no? One extempo thought, even something so good as love can be stressful. So nice, no? So controversial, but it's still nice. Everybody is started smiling the moment we asked about how to deal with breakup. So love might be stressful, but in a sweet way, yeah, if we handle it in the right way. Thank you. Continue.
Yeah. Only good stresses, maybe during your exams, you say that you feel stressed. Yeah, stresses are good. But during your exams, only then you will be able to cope up with those kind of, the anxiety that you're facing. Only then you start studying, maybe only before the day before the exams. Maybe a few couple of weeks or before the exams, we'll usually read. We're not going to read the entire year. So while those stresses are maybe pushing us to, deal with all this exams and maybe your tests. Yeah. In spite of that, you're not able to cope up with your exam stresses or anything. Maybe a quick way to calm down when your body is experiencing the stress response is to a simple way is to practice your breathing exercises and also practice this. We call it as progressive muscle relaxation, where it is a technique involving both tensing and relaxing all the muscles until the body is completely relaxed. So one way is to reduce the amount of stress that you experience is to keep a minimalist, like be organized, soothing study area that's free of distractions and clutter or whatever, and also use positive thinking and affirmations. All that it is going to help you in terms of your exams. Then with your relationship issues or any kind of breakup, we usually say it's always there's a link between your kind of addictions and your heartbreak. So like for your for your brain coming through your heartbreak is like coming off drugs, and we call it like love is some kind of an addiction, as Dr. Ardanari has already mentioned. For example, like if you find yourself frequently texting or cyber stalking or engaging in any other behaviors that you normally wouldn't, then you're experiencing an unfortunate side effects following your breakup. And continuing this behavior, when it's going to only reinforce the craving and delay in recovery. It's true, time heals all wounds following any kind of an relationship failure. But however, it's hard to take comfort in that kind of sentiment in the midst of such a heartache. So some kind of strategies that could help you in this addiction and to move forward in your life is towards healing. Just honor your pain, like allow yourself to feel it now so that you're helping your future self. And also let go of the false hopes. Like false hopes is as tempting as it is, like, it's deceiving. Like a drug that it may feel good in the moment, but will delay the pain that you're going through. The real healing begins when you come to place, start accepting that about the reality. So then, apart from that, you have to remove that particular remaining friends immediately after breakup. It's likely going to prolong the grieving process that you're going through. This is not to say that you can't be a friend with your ex-partner at some point in time in future. But until you go through this cold turkey, like deleting all your contact information, blocking them on social media, or try to limit contact as much as possible and discard other things like physical reminders, some gifts or pictures or all things. For time being, you can just start avoiding them because it's all going to reinforce your ex's presence in your mind and only make it harder for you to stop fantasizing about your broken relationship. And also, you should be beware of idealizing, like checking in with friends, with asking them to remind you of all the reasons the relationship didn't work out. So this reminds yourself of the negatives and the avoiding of the trap, believing that you'll never find anyone or any relationship as perfect as your past relationship. And also should be mindful about your self-blame or any kind of self-criticism or self-doubt. So with the end of each wrong relationship, we are getting closer to the right one. So that is the kind of mindset you should have with it.
Thank you so much, Sumitra. I would like to give 2 tips on these things and how to handle stress and then to handle breakups or regarding that relationship issues. First is walk. An early morning walk is one of the best forms of coping with mechanisms. That is when you have a very brisk walk every day in the morning, automatically your brain secretes something called as endorphins, which helps you cope up better. Right. So if you practice being physically active, start the day fresh and then take a very good walk, very brisk walk. It is definitely going to improve your stress handling capacity and coping skills. When it comes to relationship issues, I would like to just drop one school of thought, which I've always told whenever there is this relationship issues. See, a healthy relationship is something that you gradually build up. Right. So in a healthy relationship, any person wants their partner to be happy. Right. Am I loud and clear? But where does
Yes,
the
sir.
problem where does the problem begin? You want your partner to be happy the way you want them to be happy. I want you to be happy, but I don't like you doing this. How can you be happy about it? You cannot ask that. So you need to give them, you need to give the space. You need to understand, respect, and love them unconditionally. I won't say there shouldn't be any expectation in a relationship. Of course, the relationship builds on expectations. There are a lot of expectations, but it need not be disrespecting another person's preferences, another person's, something that means a lot to them. So if a relationship is built on understanding and then caring and respecting each other, that is definitely going to be a stress-free relationship. So try to change the mentality. Just because we are emotionally connected with the other person, it does not mean that they have to do whatever we ask them of. They might differ. Try to respect that. When you have a conflict, try to solve it, resolve it, rather than trying to become emotional and trying to get into fights. Okay. So that would be my 2 tips for this. Anything from Pavitra?
Maintaining a good relationship.
Yeah.
I think we've touched the relationship area quite well, but I just want to say that despite all the baseline tips we've just discussed so far, coping is individualized. Each person have their own coping style, and there is all that we are bothered about is not having a maladaptive coping strategy. It could be showing aggression, it could be using substances. I want to, we see it in movies and all also. I want to forget that girl, or I want to forget that guy, and so I drink. So that is a maladaptive coping strategy. So it's very important that we make sure that we haven't fallen into one of those coping methods. And other than that, if we're still finding it difficult to, you have this buffering system, you talk to your friends, you talk to people close to you, all that are adaptive strategies. There are ways that you heal yourself. We have to use strategies that have worked in the past. You go back in time. Have I had a stressful period? How have I come across and how have I coped through that stress? And reusing that, if it is an adaptive strategy, is a very good technique, which each and every therapist of yours will try to identify and reuse. And the basic aim is to avoid these maladaptive ones and infuse more adaptive strategies that you are comfortable with. If it's still not working on your own buffer systems and your own people, I'm not saying come to the therapist or come to a psychiatrist for everything, but at a point when you are not able to deal with it, just don't forget that there is another option that you haven't tried out. Okay, let's go reach out to help is one of the best help that you could do to yourself. So if you could keep that in mind, I think whatever the stress is, education, relationships, self, anything, I think still works. Okay, so just make sure that you remember that part, that you have professional help outside, which is, professional helps matro illa. There is professional help that is available outside that you can seek out and reach out to. Okay, that's all from me.
Thank you so much. It's been a
May I add to this question, sir? So, especially during the stress, during the exam period, most of my peers have occasional use of occasional smoking or alcoholism or any other recreational things they do. But during the exam spell, that particular 1.5 or 2 months of duration, the amount of consumption increases a lot. Someone who smokes 2 cigarettes a week is smoking 25 cigarettes a day. So, and after this spell of exams, let us say the result goes well and there's no additional stress on them. Most of them come out of it and they get back to their normal lifestyle. But for some people, it will be very hard and they are stuck on it. So what will be the role of peers in helping them out? And again, in the breakups as well, ma'am, I think I really loved the point where you mentioned we could reach out to the professional help. So again, in points of saving the relationship from a breakup, or coping with the breakup, what are the different modes of professional help that we can expect or we can try and reach out? Clarity on these two areas.
Yes, and the question is directed to Pavitra or Sumitra?
The first part, sir, drug abuse is for you, sir, and second part for the Pavitra ma'am.
Sumitra, can you?
Yeah.
First part.
No,
First
go
part.
on, go
Drug
on, go on.
abuse is for you. Yeah, the first
No,
part
go
of
on.
drug abuse question was for you, and second part relationship is for Pavitra.
You said it's for you.
Oh, it's for me.
It's for you. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
See, basically, it is just the type of reaction, right? Usually, many of them get into an increase in drug use behavior during a stressful situation like examination. When you can identify a person who's having tendency to get addicted to that, or having a problem with the drug taking behavior, definitely as peers, we should try to take them to a professional help, or maximum motivate that person not to use that drug. Right. Prevention is definitely better than cure. The more he does not get into it, the better the outcome is going to be. So it is a responsibility of the peers to try and then avoid that particular person to get into that spree. If they are not able to do that, they can definitely take him to a trusted professional person who is next to them. If you are not trusting the person who is there in your institution, you can definitely take them to an external person. Right. So that would be my answer to that.
Yes.
Rather than not doing anything or trying to tell them that, okay, after some time it will become all right. That's not going to happen for people who are having problem with drug taking behavior. It is not going to be of any help. So it's the best to demotivate him from using that drug or to take him to a professional person for help. Yeah, Pavitra.
So to answer your question on how can a professional help when I am going through a problem, I mean, yes, you spoke about particularly breakups, but I think this is a general question that everybody has. Problem is mine. I only have to deal it. Then what is this person going to do professionally? Is a question that everybody has. But there are areas where we can work on in terms of, see, though we feel sad for different reasons, we feel sad a particular way. Okay. One, there is a biological component to feeling sad. If you are extremely sad, if your mood is very low and you are going through a really difficult time that you're not able to come out of, maybe medications could be necessary for you at that point in time. That is one thing, because we don't realize, we just think it is every breakup or every stressor is just one stressor. This will also pass. That is a outlook that we have towards others and sometimes ourselves because it worked for you. But maybe not everyone have that same way of getting over their problems. Maybe the stress is too much for them to handle and they do sometimes need pharmacological help to bring them up. And I would look at pharmacological help more like a pole, holding on to it until your problem goes over, and then getting over your pharmacological help is more like holding a pole in a very rough river. Okay, so that is one place where maybe pharmacological help and professional help is required. The other thing is sometimes people are not comfortable in sharing their problems to people close to them alone, and maybe the right sort of help. This will get okay, bro. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's distract yourself. Is maybe not just enough. Your friends would have tried that initially, but subsequently, if that is still not working out, then maybe we have to go back and think about the way that they basically process things. And there is more of emotion focused therapies that can be done, which will help them get over their problems better and help them handle their problems. When you face stress, there is a lot of emotional dysregulation that happens, which can be handled by therapies also. Does that answer your question, Pirigu?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pavitra and Sumitra, Pirigu, Mohammed, and Pavan from Professional Helps. I would like to conclude this small discussion by saying that
Sir,
happiness is a choice that we make. At the end of the day, we can always choose to be happy.
yeah.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Over to
Thank you.
Pavan.
Yes, thank you all. And then, guys, now this is doubt session. You can post your doubts in the available chat box. So we'll just pick few of the questions, and then we would like to answer remaining questions via your email because there are a lot of doubts have been asked now, so we could not cover everything. And then we'll take another 5 to 10 minutes in order to take the doubts. So I would like to give to Bhagat. Bhagat, kindly, please. Yeah.
Thanks, Pawan. I would like to say that as I was going through the questions so far posted, I would say that this is a very successful session. We've almost covered nearly, about 70 to 80% of the topics. So yeah, it's a really effective session, I'd say. I have two questions which I felt were not touched upon. One would be, how do you draw the line between, getting repeated bouts of being anxious and actual depression, and also between ADHD? Because it's a misconception of falling one into the other, and people, assume or they tend to feel that they are being labeled under these terms.
Yeah, the question is directed to
Any of the panelists.
Any of the panelists, it's open. Whoever is
I think we can. Dr. Sumitra can start.
Yeah, be it for depression or anxiety, we have certain criteria. Okay. Like major and minor criteria we have on all these symptoms, which like I think we have spoken earlier, like we have a pervasive low mood, reduced interest in doing your previously pleasurable activities, feeling hopeless, helpless, worthless, all these symptoms which has to be present for continuously for 2 weeks. Okay. So I think we spoke about the other personality disorders earlier, where it usually overlaps. So you have to be, it overlaps significantly. So you have to be able to differentiate that based on we have something called like ICD criteria. So based on that only we are diagnosing be it any kind of anxiety or depressive illness.
And when it comes to anxiety episodes, there is one method which people who are suffering from anxiety episodes can follow. There is something called as bag and mask technique or breathing exercises.
Breathing.
It is very much available in YouTube itself. If you type in as bag and mask exercise for anxiety attacks or panic episodes, you can actually try and follow those things, which will actually help you. Right. Next question.
Yeah, one second. Sir, you said about the technique, so we'll share the YouTube link in the WhatsApp group so it benefits everyone.
Yeah, I think after the session we can
share with the participants. Yeah, but please continue.
Okay, due to lack of time constraint, as Pawan said again, the last one would be, how would you effectively prepare a strong mindset? Because you guys have effectively touched on all the basic negatives, and this is kind of a general question. I do get it, but
I don't think anybody. Yeah, tell me.
Exactly.
Sorry.
So that's the thing. That's the problem right now. How do you actually develop a strong mindset? Like, how do you it's kind of hard in today's age and time with what we have. It's more easier to actually find solutions to particular problems. But if you were to go for this, how would you actually develop a stronger mindset to face this?
Actually, there is nothing called as the strongest mind.
True.
Actually, everybody has got their mindset because of various emotions put together. So in any situation, you either learn a lesson or you get consumed by that. Like once you learn a lesson, you try to make yourself better and then try to handle the similar situation in a better way the next time this comes. When you get consumed by the situation, that is when you're not able to handle it and you might need professional help. So basically, human mindset is based on a series or repetitive learning process. That's my point. Yes, Sumitra.
When you start off your day with a positive thinking, be it any kind of stressor that you have gone through. Okay, positive thinking, and it's good. Any kind of negative events that have happened in your life in the past, you have to take it in a way that whatever happened is for a good. Start your day with a positive thinking and be gratitude for what you've been for the day, and with a good affirmation that will really help you with, going through with a, as you call it, as a strong mind, firm mind, or whatever.
Okay.
And I just want to say that it's okay if you don't have a strong mind. We always have to have different views to the same point, right? That's why we are in a panel discussion. I totally go by with what Dr. Arjunari and Dr. Sumitra are saying, but just bringing a different color to the same question, I'm saying that it's okay not to be strong. You don't have to be strong. And if I always tell my clients that if you get hurt, then you have to cry. It will pain. It will pain. You have to
Precisely
cry.
the point. Yes.
So, I mean, we are every day faced with stressors. So, it's okay to be stressed. And how are we just managing through that process is what matters rather than trying to avoid it. Avoidance might not be the best of our coping strategies. That is helpful. Sometimes, yes, it helps. Sometimes it just doesn't help. So just trying to avoid a problem, avoiding a negative circumstance does not help. So it's okay, you get through the process of being stressed because that is when resilience will develop. The earlier you face your stress, the earlier you reach and earlier you build your coping strategies, the more resilient you become to future stressors that will come. So I think that itself is building a strong mind in a process.
And another thing is that there is a lot of misconception that boys should not cry because it is not a very strong display of
Not
your
very manly.
mindset. It is not very manly.
Yeah.
That is absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
Whenever I've had bad situations, I've cried. It is a normal process. And when we are born, if you cry, it means that you have a normal. You apparently have a normal development, right? Breathing. When you cry, the first question that you will ask any child is whether the child cried at birth. So when you cry, it means that you have more chances to be normal. That is just like sweating. That is just like urination and defecation. That is just the body is reacting to that situation. There is absolutely nothing wrong in that. Pawan is going to cut the call and then go and cry for half an hour and then come.
I guess he's laughing now.
Yeah, sir. Like my current stress is like I need to complete this session before.
Before time, so he's like, enough, let's give it all as
This
mail.
session is so good. Session is so good. So many people are. I think it has turned out to be a very interesting session so far. We've had for the past 1.5 years.
I hope so.
Hope so. Latest, I think.
Get from that feedback from the participants, which will be shared in 10 minutes. So yeah, we'll get from them.
Yeah. So any other questions from the audience side?
Yes, there are a lot of questions, but we are restricting now as it's time concern. So I'll just reply with them personally via professional email. So yeah, before I'm concluding, I just want to let you guys know about Yukti, which is conducted by Balaji Medical College. It's a national summit. It's contain a lot of workshops, nearly 14 workshops from various departments. It's on October 19 to 23. It's even have online events and offline events. So we'll be sharing the link for the event, so you guys could check it out. And then because after 2 years, we are just now getting a workshop, and even because of this COVID pandemic, so I guess it will be interesting if you guys get participated. So we'll be sharing the link, and then you guys can check it out. And then, yeah, now, like, I would like to end the session by asking conclusion from Dr. Pavitra about this session.
About
Yeah.
Pavitra ma'am and Sumitra ma'am will conclude the session.
Okay. I mean, let me just say that I enjoyed this thoroughly because it is one opportunity to talk to youngsters, and every such opportunity is a super joyous and very informative opportunity, I feel, because what is the point if I'm going to didactically keep talking about what I know, and when there is so much to learn from all of you, because by your questions both I and you learn in the process. So I think for that I started with this, and I'm going to end with that, saying I'm really happy that Professional Helps took up this type of an event, and it was so interactive. I think I enjoyed it. I hope you found it enjoyable and useful as well. Thank you so much, guys.
Over to Dr. Sumitra.
Yeah.
This session is actually, I liked it a lot compared to our earlier session which we had like a couple of weeks ago. Because interacting,
Okay.
Like we had a much of interaction, and all your questions were like, it was much very high, which is standard questions. All you have asked, and as you said, like we have almost touched most of the topics in just this 45 minutes, I guess. Hope to have not very soon. Hope to have next few sections like this, such interactive section with youngsters like
See, our
this.
session is so interesting that even their pets are pets are enjoying it so
Engaged.
much.
So I hope so.
Yeah.
We'll just confirm it in like after 10 minutes because we'll get the feedback, no? So we'll confirm it from there.
You get the feedback from the pet also. I think the pet has also already started giving the feedback.
Okay, sir. Like, you want to conclude
Thank you
anything,
so
sir?
much. Thank you so much, Pawan, for giving
Okay.
such a wonderful opportunity. I would like to thank Bhagat, Perugu, Mohammed, and Vishnu, who was not able to be a part of
Sir,
today's
I am
discussion.
Vishnu.
Okay, yes.
My name is
Oh, you are
Telugu
Vishnu
Vishnu
also.
Bharadwaj.
Everything okay with you? You said that Pawan told that you are in an emergency, you are into the ambulance and all.
No, sir.
It was
Some
not
emergency. Some emergency. Like
No,
you
there was
can.
just bad weather situation.
Oh,
Telugu
something
is
else.
Vishnu,
Oh,
sir. Not two different people.
sorry, da. It was my mistake. I'm apologizing live in front of 140 people.
Not
What
at all.
is the
It's totally fine.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
guys. Then I'll just.
So
Sir,
we'll be
I'll
doing
just take
the
over from
second
there.
part also soon. So we'll be doing the second part of the session with different set of issues from youngsters. It is going to be a similar session. Thanks a lot for the opportunity, professional helps, and everybody who's
Yeah.
in the organizing team.
Yeah, thank you guys, and then I would like to thank all the panelists, Dr. Athanay, Dr. Pavitra, Dr. Sumitra, Dr. Mohammed, Dr. Perugub, and then Bhagat, and then Parul, and then Karthik Ashok Sriram from my team. So I would like to thank everyone here. And then I would also thank the audience for patient listening, and then maybe a few times like we just exceeded the limit. So yeah, kindly apologize us, and then yeah, kindly we're sharing you the feedback form. Kindly fill that. So in order to receive your e-certificate, which has been given in 15 days. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you.